I am unmuted. Perfect. Thank you, Neil.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 101st YQNA meeting. My name is Ryan Singh. My pronouns are he and him. I am the chair of the YQNA. Thank you for joining us this evening for what's going to be a very packed agenda, but with a lot of important topics. These meetings are made to connect the community and keep residents informed on important issues. Before we get into the agenda this evening, I'd like to read the YQNA land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Wendat, Anishinaabe, Onondaga, Chippewa, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. We pay tribute to their legacy and the legacy of all First Peoples of Canada. Today, the traditional meeting place of Toronto is still home to many Indigenous people from across our island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work in communities that have grown in their treaty lands. Before we continue to the agenda, I do want to pass it over to our Chief Technical Officer, Neil Kulgras. He organizes the technical aspects for tonight's meetings, and I'll ask him to give a quick note on how everything will operate tonight.
Hi, everyone. The only thing I'd like to mention, just as a reminder, if you want to pose a question or leave a comment, a civil comment, just click on the chat button, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen on any computer, tablet, or phone. It'll open a chat field, and at the bottom, there's a little space where you can type in your question. And we'll get to all the questions and comments we can, time permitting. That's about it.
Great. Thank you so much, Neil, and thank you for all the work that you're doing behind the scenes to operate these meetings. As Neil mentioned, we'll keep an eye on the chat function or the meeting chat, and we'll try to address your questions to all the speakers, of course, time permitting. As mentioned, we have a packed agenda. I ask that we all please be respectful with our comments and questions, as all our participants have done in the past. So on that note, we'll get started on the agenda. I will give a very brief chair's update before we get on to our guest speakers. So I want to thank the team at YQNA for their confidence in entrusting me to lead this organization and to work with them. As everybody knows, the YQNA has a strong foundation and is known as one of the best residents associations in the city. Every time I speak to stakeholders or other folks who are also community activists or community leaders, they tell me that what Ula and Angelo have built here is truly something fantastic. I'm looking forward on building on that foundation and ensuring that we continue to amplify the issues that are important to our community. I always say to folks, we live in one of the most popular and beautiful communities in the country, and I am personally excited at the opportunity that we have to work with our community partners and ensuring that YQNA continues to be one of the best places to live, work, and play. And I'm just going to pause because I just noticed Angelo is on the call here, and I just want to recognize him. And Angelo, welcome, and thank you for the work that you've done. It might be a little odd for you to be watching this stuff, but I wanted to say thank you for joining. Since becoming the chair of the organization, we've continued to work on a number of areas and launched some new projects. Just a short, brief summary on behalf of you, serving residents. We held our planning committee meeting where we discussed and organized on important issues. We've already engaged with our city councilor on important issues, and we recently met with the new CEO at the Harborfront Center, and I would say already built a very strong relationship that seems to be very promising. To serve you and serve our community better, I've worked with Neil and the team to activate some new tools. We are now doing a bi-monthly community newsletter. You can subscribe to that newsletter at yqna.ca. That will keep you updated on events happening and news from YQNA on a regular basis, along with other updates. We also have a new Instagram account. So if you are on Instagram, and I will put all this in the chat shortly, please do go and follow us on Instagram, another venue where you can get updates and see what's going on in the community. And finally, the last thing I'll mention, I believe it's the first time, and Neil can correct me, we are live streaming this YouTube. We're live streaming this meeting to YouTube. That can be accessed by members of the community after the fact as well. So do feel free to visit our website and check us out on Instagram. Finally, two more notes. donations. We are a purely volunteer-based organization with no regular revenue stream. We do incur expenses to operate these meetings and carry out work on your behalf. So if you can, please consider making a donation. You can go to yqna.ca to do that, and support us and the tools that we need to amplify our concerns and issues here in YQNA. Finally, the last note I'll do is a call out to new volunteers. Similarly to when Angela did a call out for new volunteers, I joined, and a year later I'm the chair. So we have several roles in this organization. We're looking to grow our team and seeking new talented individuals to join and make a difference. We will be needing a new secretary, treasurer. We need building reps as well to continue delivering our message to our neighbors and then also feeding back us with local concerns. If you're interested in a small or large role in YQNA, please let me know. You can directly contact me at chair@yqna.ca. So as mentioned, I'll put that in the chat in a bit so you can get all of that information. On that note, we're going to keep the meeting moving along. Our first guest speakers are already here. Tim is the executive director of the Waterfront BIA, and he's joined by his colleague, Catherine. She's the marketing director of the Waterfront BIA. As everybody knows, YQNA is committed to partnering with the BIA and ensuring that our local businesses are successful and provide a number of services to residents and local jobs. Today, we're going to have a presentation on the organization's current events, their public art and activities. The Waterfront BIA has fantastic statistics on the waterfront, which really demonstrate why this neighborhood is so special. I recently met with them and found out more. The BIA gives back to the community in many ways. There's new wayfinding signage, event support, and I learned about their Clean Streets team, and I saw them in action actually, which is something a lot of residents don't know about. So pleased to have them here, join us and sharing some of the important work that they're doing for the community. So I'll hand it over to the Waterfront BIA.
Thanks, Ryan. And I should say thank you for meeting yesterday. I met Ryan for the first time. My colleague Dorsa from the operations team and I went to meet with him. I also saw him working the media a couple weeks ago, so I can already tell we're gonna have a hard time keeping up with your new chair at YQNA. So today, as Ryan said, we had offered to come on and do an update. We're hoping that especially if you like this, that you might have us on once a year just to go through our kind of events and art and activation strategy. Because to be honest, about a third of the Waterfront BI's budget goes towards sponsoring people to do as many exciting things in the waterfront. Some of them are specifically targeted at the community. And Catherine Hebb, who's on the phone, is our marketing director. So I'll pass it over to her in a second, but I'll also say, Ryan, I think that I know that you mentioned there were people who had questions about things like the retail review we released a few months ago, and we did a report on kind of the future of the waterfront with the Board of Trade recently. I'm going to post links to those reports, and I'll also just offer generally that if you ever want presentations or updates on specific topics, let me know. I tend to come on the meeting and you let me to speak, but I just say a couple of things to be quick. But if you ever want more detailed presentations, Catherine and I or the rest of the team can do it. But on that, I'm going to pass it over to Catherine.
Thanks. And hi, Ryan. Did you have the deck to share, or do you want me to?
I believe Neil might pull it up. But
Okay, sounds great. And yeah, thanks, guys. And just to introduce myself, so as Tim said, I am the director of marketing with the Waterfront BIA, and one of our, our major priorities is trying to attract kind of large-scale events and run community events, and really looking for ways to activate the waterfront. So, sorry, can people see that?
Is it showing up?
No, I was just going to send you a note. It's not showing up. It's saying you started to share screen, but there's nothing yet there, Neil.
Catherine, you don't have it to share on your screen? Do you have it on yours? If they give you from them,
I had to send a request to share.
Oh, okay. Neil, can you give Catherine permission? I guess that's what she has.
Okay. Yeah, so this is not showing then, huh?
No.
No. Okay. Sorry, everyone. I will give you a chance to share.
I have it too, Catherine, if it doesn't work from your screen, but I'm sure it will.
Just says I need permission. Oh, wait. Okay. Let's see.
You know what? I'm going to try again while you're doing that because it was working earlier and I
Okay.
did a few tests and everything seemed fine. But I guess that's not working, everyone, huh?
Not yet, no.
So, while we wait, Tim, is there anything else that you want to share about BIA
Oh,
or?
no, it's a pretty visual presentation, so we can't.
Yeah,
Catherine can't share her screen. I guess I can try mine too.
let's see, share.
There we go.
Here we go.
Catherine, we can see your screen.
Okay, let me.
That's oh, perfect.
All right. Can we see a full screen there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, everyone. Sorry. So yes, as I mentioned, a big priority of us is to drive events down to the waterfront. And the agenda I'm going to take you through today is really, I'm going to talk about our mandate as far as events go and our objectives with supporting events and running events. I'm going to take you through some past events we've supported and run ourselves. I'm then going to talk about actually 2025, our shoulder season planning, which will be the fall of next year. And then we have such a busy fall coming up on the waterfront as far as events go. So I'm going to take you through what you can expect to see this month and next month on the waterfront, because it's definitely one of the busiest falls we've seen in a very long time. So our mandate as far as events and activations. So first of all, when I say we try and draw events down here, there's kind of different areas we focus on. There's the big events and festivals that really put Toronto on the map as being, a waterfront city, which is what we want to do, attract new visitors, really attract attention to the waterfront itself. And then we also really focus on community events, which, brings out residents, creates that more of a community feel, brings people together to connect to the water, to connect to the actual water itself. And then we also focus on public art programs and trying to kind of animate the waterfront through public art. So that's when we talk about events and activations, that's usually those kind of three areas. And then our mandate is to bring people to the waterfront for meaningful and memorable experiences. The second, which is becoming more of a priority, is highlighting the off seasons. So that's really anywhere between October and May when visitor traffic to the waterfront really drops off. And we also focus on trying to animate the spaces on the eastern and western waterfront. And then the third priority is, which is like maybe the biggest focus, is collaborating with waterfront stakeholders that are interested in bringing events and activations to the waterfront and working with them together to try and bring the best kind of events to the neighborhood. So those partners include Waterfront Toronto, Harbourfront Centre, the city, Ports Toronto, Water's Edge Festival events, and others. So I want to talk about past events we've supported and kind of the areas we'd look to support. So as I mentioned, a big priority is bigger festival and events that really, position us as a waterfront city. So examples of these are the Tall Ships Festival that happens every 3 years and is actually happening next year in 2025. Fireworks, which have traditionally happened on New Year's Eve, that draw a ton of people down here. The Smorgasburg Food Market, which some of you may know from 2022 and 2023. So those are all kind of examples of kind of landmark destination events that we supported. And then there's the community activations, which I was speaking about. So these are more smaller programming, really focused at appealing to the residents and people that work on the waterfront, that really brings people together to connect, to chat, to connect with the water. So examples of these, and these are often led by the BIA because they are kind of smaller budget items that we can do. So yoga series, we did that 2 summers ago. This summer we did a paint night series at 4 different parks that you may have seen, which is very popular. We've supported chalk artists and dockside dance performances. So that's more the local community type events that we've supported in the past and will continue to support. And then public art initiatives. So As you all know, adding arts provides, meaning and uniqueness to each community. So that is very important in our neighborhood as well. I'm not sure why that one image isn't showing up. Oh, there it is. So examples of these we've done in the past. We had a program called Winter Stations, which was a number of installations that line Queens Quay. We had a waterfront artist in residency program, which ran for 3 years that spanned the waterfront. And as well as things like murals and projections on the silos, which you can see in these images here. So that's examples of public art initiatives that we've undertaken. And as I mentioned, we are looking to make the fall of 2025 a priority. So this is what we call the shoulder season. So as most of you know, right after Labor Day, or traditionally right after Labor Day, traffic to the waterfront drops quite a bit. And we're really looking for ways to keep that momentum and keep people coming down to the waterfront. So what we're looking at doing is really, working with all the existing stakeholders that have programming already happening in the fall, and kind of combining all our efforts and working together to bring together one cohesive waterfront event. So working with them as well as bringing new programming. And I believe in 2025, as you can see in this map, we're really going to focus more on the Western waterfront. And then as this grows and expands year over year, which is our intention, we hope by 2027, it can expand further into the Eastern waterfront. And then finally, I did want to share, just because this fall is one of the busiest falls we've had on the waterfront to date, I did want to share what you can expect to see. This slide is actually just a snapshot of some of the events that you can expect to see, but there really is quite a bit happening. So I did want to mention this past weekend, as probably a lot of you know, the Toronto Waterfront Festival was here, and as was the Harbourfront Centre Night Market. So very, very busy this past weekend. On September 22nd, which is this coming Sunday, you can expect to see the Bentways Dominoes. And what this is like large scale dominoes, and it's going to be a 2.5 kilometer domino fall that concludes on the waterfront, on the Western waterfront. And I believe the final domino kind of splashes into the lake. So that will be a big draw for sure. And then between September 19th and 29th, Harbourfront Centre has the Toronto International Festival of Authors, which is always a pretty big draw during that timeline. And the major one that's coming to the waterfront, which has an entirely hub and focused area, is Nuit Blanche, which is happening on October 5th. So that will be stretching from Sherbourne all the way to Little Norway Park with over 30 installations. So, it's going to be a major presence, and I think they're expecting, Nuit Blanche as a whole expects 1 million visitors. So it's going to be a very, very busy evening on the waterfront on October 5th. And then a smaller activation that's the Waterfront BA run. We're going to have some musical performances at the Music Garden on October 12th and 19th. And we also have some new lights that will be activated by sound. So these performances will have these dynamic lights over top interacting with the music. So that's a snapshot. Obviously, we also have the Toronto Marathon and some other events happening. But as you can see, it's a really, really busy fall on the waterfront, leading up to kind of end of October, which is new for the waterfront, and very exciting to keep traffic and a lively atmosphere on the waterfront until then. And those are all my slides. If anyone has any questions specifically on our mandate or what we're working on, or questions about specific events, I'd be happy to answer.
So first of all, thank you for that presentation. It's always good to know what's happening in our neighborhood. Like as I mentioned, this neighborhood isn't just made for the tourists who come down here, but as residents, we should get out and take advantage of all these wonderful, like this list here that's in front of us. I didn't see any questions come in yet, but there is something percolating in my mind. Has the BIA ever considered fireworks during Canada Day rather than New Year's? Because there's a little bit of a temperature shift in the two seasons.
Definitely. Yes, we have. And we actually have been talking about that the last little while. So I think right now they're at Ashbridges Bay, and I think they have been a while. We would love them to be down here in Canada Day. So I think we have had conversations with the city, but I mean, that would be amazing. And yeah, we'll continue to have those conversations to, I guess, understand why they're further out east on the beaches versus in downtown Toronto on our waterfront.
Excellent.
So,
And if-
Ryan, I'll add to that. I think that the city has been doing their fireworks at New Year's Eve on the waterfront. They typically don't confirm publicly until the end of November where they're doing it, but I can say we are quite confident that they will do it again. I think the city also does their fireworks where if they get sponsor support to do it, which is how we are pretty sure they're going to do it here again because we've offered to sponsor it again at New Year's Eve. And what Catherine's referring to, I think, is so to be honest, like Canada Day fireworks is not our biggest priority because it's very expensive and it's only one night. So we tend to try and do more extended things, but we have talked to the city, as Catherine said, about kind of thinking about new ways to fund it for Canada Day because it's such an obvious thing, Ryan, that the businesses often complain that even now, like 20 years after the Benston Hedges Canada Day fireworks, people still come down here expecting there to be fireworks. So it's not the greatest brand for us to not have it. It's just that no one's really stepped up and put up the $150,000 it costs to do
Fair
like a
enough.
fireworks show. But you can raise the money from sponsors. It just hasn't been done recently, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
And just to add to your list, there's a comment here that somebody said they would love to see a laser show rather than fireworks. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's common feedback, or the drone show, a
Yep.
bit more environmentally friendly. Yeah, I've heard a lot of that as well.
excellent.
The city is, I think the city told us last week, Catherine, that they are kind of exploring how to,
Yeah,
these drone shows are very expensive to do the really big, exciting ones. But they're also, they need a lot of property. That's why you see it being done from like Ontario Place or Exhibition Place, because they can
Yeah.
block off a big territory to put down like 3,000 drones that then fly up. So unfortunately the waterfront doesn't have that many huge open lots. But yeah, it sounds like that. I think you will see that sort of thing in the future. And there's also, remember, like Catherine, we sponsored a couple of years ago, the Biennial of Art did that smoke show thing at Sugar Beach. And like that was not fireworks, but was similar. I mean,
yeah.
I don't think we do that every year, but there are, of course, other things you can do that are large scale than just fireworks. I think you'll see other options coming up in the future.
Excellent. I don't see any other questions coming in, but before you guys conclude, oh, there is a question actually. Sorry, somebody wanted to know, and this ties into what I was going to ask you guys. What time does the Domino's fall, and where's the best vegan locations? And maybe whoever answers that can just maybe tell us where we can get more information on all these activities coming up, or do you guys have something folks can subscribe to get information?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, you can go to the Bentley website, but you can go to our website under events, and we have all the waterfront events listed there. And you can click through for more information specific to Domino's. I believe Domino's, I believe the fall, you might want to get there early just in case it is crowded getting down there. I believe the fall is at, Tim, is it at 4 or 4:30?
I'm just looking it up. The fall of the Dominoes starts at 4:30. That's
Okay.
up at like Niagara Street, but it should be done. They think it's like going to take a half
So
an
half
hour.
an
So
hour. So it's
4:30
2.5
is when it should be
kilometers. They're
finished.
concrete dominoes, so they don't fall.
4:30 to 5.
They don't fall like regular dominoes. They're kind of slower motion. I'm not sure the best viewing points. Like there are, I think there probably are areas you can kind of run along and watch them, but there is the section along the waterfront is kind of straighter. So I'm wondering if that's a better vantage point to see more of it happen. But it does conclude at the waterfront is it the malting silos, I believe, Tim?
Yeah, the Spadina slip beside the malting silos on the west end, like near the Island Airport is where it's going to end.
Right.
And Catherine, I just put the BIA newsletter sign up.
Oh yes, that was the
It
other
has
question.
all our event listings that go.
Yes.
That's
You
on
could-
our. I just
yeah.
posted it. If you're not signed up, please sign up.
Great. Well, thank you, Tim and Catherine, for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us and share all these wonderful initiatives that you're working on. And I'm looking forward to it. And I know many residents are looking forward to seeing this and seeing more from you guys. So thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Singh.
No problem. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the Harbourfront Center. Massimo Damari is going to be Damaria is going to be joining us. He's the Chief Operating Officer. As mentioned in my opening, we recently, the team at YQNA met with Kathy Loblaw. She is the new CEO, and it was a very, very productive meeting. I believe, started off on a good foot and a very strong relationship. I can tell you that Kathy is focused on connecting with the community and reviving the Harbourfront Center. We are going to be working with the team at Harbourfront Center to have Kathy join us soon in the future, so all of you can meet her and hear from her firsthand. I I like to say to folks that the Harbourfront Center is a gem right in the middle of our neighborhood, and the success of our community is based on the success of Harbourfront Center. It's not just made as a destination for tourists and guests, but it also serves the community. So on that note, I'll pass it over to Massimo to give us a brief update.
Thank you, Ryan. Always nice to be here and share some news with everyone. I don't have as a exciting presentation as the last one because the summer is the heavy schedule, and I do have a shortened one that is for the fall. We are still working diligently through our winter programming, and so we'll save that for the next time. But there's lots of work being done in the background. So I'm going to share a few slides and then speak to them if I have access. I believe I do. Just if I can get can everyone see this?
Yep.
I cannot hear or anyone at the moment. Can anyone see this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I don't know what you're seeing. Unfortunately, I have a really bad view right here.
It's good enough.
Is it good enough?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can make that up.
Fair enough. Thank you very much for that. So I'm going to give you a brief update on a year-to-date numbers and what we're standing for on safety and security on our campus, what we're seeing, that we've had actually some activity again happen this weekend and then yesterday that was somewhat disturbing. So there's lots happening on that front. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then some programming highlights for the fall that we have that take us basically to December. So just safety and security, basically disturbance, suspicious activities, and property damage. So we continue to see this influx in our area. People trying to basically seek shelter, sometimes trying to break into our property to seek shelter, and other reasons. But that seems to be highly on the rise. Increased alcohol use, illicit substances on site, along with attempts and successful ones at theft, including property damage that we just sustained yesterday. Unfortunately, it is happening. So we've also have seen more break and enters. So we're averaging about 2 break and enters every month. So that's a significant increase from our 23 averages. Police requests. So this also is an indication of what's kind of happening in our waterfront, or at least in our property. They often will reach out to us for footage on cameras that we have along the water. So they're investigating things of high-risk crimes, including sexual assaults, violence without weapons, and things of that nature. So those are the sorts of things our security team is trying to manage across the 10 acres along the waterfront. It's a lot to cover. Total number of incidents, this is just kind of a high level. There was 582 incidences so far for the year that we're tracking. These are some of the highlights, if you will. Suspicious activity or disturbances are 185. We've had 108 property damages so far. That's not including the last 2 days. Violent incidents and arrests were at 43, and break and enters and thefts were at 16. So, just yesterday we had some people lighting fire around the 207 Queens Quay Terminal building to several of their garbage cans, which are our garbage cans. So we responded to that. We were able to extinguish the fire. Yesterday it happened again by the power plant this time, and fire department arrived with police With our video coverage, we were able to work with the police. We were actually able to make an arrest and press charges in this incident. So at least we had some success with that. We're trying our part to keep the waterfront safe for everyone to enjoy. Don't want to paint a grim picture after all that lovely presentation, Catherine, but that's what's happening on the behind the scenes most of the time. So, and a lot of these things do happen overnight in the late hours as well. So this is what we're working with. We're having a lot of property damage to our vendors. Their food trucks are being damaged. Sometimes it looks deliberate. Other times it just doesn't make any sense. So we're working through those pieces. We're trying to put up more lighting in key spots. So we've identified what those are for, and try to budget those in to put some more light in those sensitive areas, if you will. So those are the safety and security pieces that we've been tracking. Any questions around that? I don't see the chat. My whole screen's like gobbled up here, Ryan.
I don't see any questions specifically about this portion, but we can do all questions at the end of, but
Sure, no
I'll let you
problem.
know if there's anything else that pops up.
Terrific. I got a couple more slides here. I'm just going to speak to. So, what outdoor venues? And Catherine, thank you for all those slides, because we cover a lot of the same space, and a lot of this is within collaboration with the city and yourselves. So, Nuit Blanche is activating October 5th at 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And that's on a few places on our properties as well. So they're all city-produced exhibitions. So they're doing the power plant, the east wall of the power plant, that's facing the terminal building, the Ontario Square, and the wave deck, along with the malting silos at Bathurst. So this is an image before, I think this was, I'm not too sure if this image is, actually, I'm not going to speak to it, but the silos look a lot nicer than that today. So I expect this to be really beautiful this time around, as we'll have a crisp backdrop for it. We will at Harbourfront have programming in the Brigantine Room. The main building is closed, but we have programming in the Brigantine Room as well for that. And we thought to make it more vibrant, we are throwing in a night market that will be on site during the Nuit Blanche. So that's happening in our public square. So that's just trying to create places of congregation and and create a nice atmosphere for people to enjoy. So we look forward to that. They've been quite successful this summer. So we are working on those even throughout the winter. I'll tell you that. And programming highlights for the fall. So again, Catherine hit this. TIFA starts September 19th is their opening, runs to the 30th. That's running through many spaces at through our building. So please come on out and support the programming. Some great festival authors, some great authors are going to be on site. They're doing workshops and talks. You can get some books signed. I think it's well worth the visit. We also have the power plant exhibition opening on the 21st of September. This is actually really beautiful. I had the sneak peek today, so it's ready to go. Of course, I have an eye on the safety side of things and the operational side of things, but it is a beautiful exhibit, and I encourage everyone to look at. All these things are available on our website. There's links that take you to different spots. We have a Poutine Fest that's lined up on the public square as well from October 18th and 19th. And then our gallery 235 in the craft corridors, we have a show that just started last week, and it runs to the 29th of December. It's called Elaborate. It's an exhibition of 5 talented artists. These artists have done a lot of ceramic works through our craft studios. One of them is a traveling artist from Korea. There's some really impressive pieces and it's all free. We welcome anyone and everyone to come down and take a look at it. So that's kind of what we have on tap over here. I'm going to stop that.
Perfect.
And open up the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation.
Yep.
Before we jump into some of the questions that came in, I will note that Tim did say that he will be at Poutine Fest, so watch out for that. For the night, sorry.
Said I'll see you there too, Ryan, right?
I hope so.
Okay.
For the night market during Nuit Blanche, do you know what hours? Are they going to operate the full hours that are Nuit Blanche, which is 7 to 7?
The Harbourfront Center building
Yeah.
is actually closed. The Brigantine will be open.
And that's where the night market will be there, or in the
Pardon
square? The night market, will it be in the square, or will it
Yes.
be? Okay,
The night market is in the public square, and that is operating through the night.
perfect. We did have a question from somebody. I know the community is anxious to meet the new CEO. They wanted to know how they can contact the new CEO. Is there a method right now that folks can get messages or notes to the new CEO at the Harbourfront Center?
There is, and it's on our website, and it goes to info, and anything that you kind of flag to any one of us gets directed to us. So it's a general email. It's not directly to the CEO's email, but it does get directed back to us, and then we respond to them.
Okay.
If there's anything that comes through, like, I've had an artist reach out to me that was seeing some programming in the summer, wanted to share some thoughts, and it came to me because it was directed to myself. So yeah, that's the best way to get in touch with us.
Excellent. We'll get that. We'll put that in chat. And sort of two questions more about future planning of some of the sites across the Harbourfront Center. There's a question here asking if there's any updates on the Amsterdam Bridge and when will the winter planning be finalized. Folks are looking to know if you have any announcements, if there's any news on skating.
Okay, they're all great questions. I have whole and in part answers for you. So the Amsterdam Bridge, the infamous Amsterdam Bridge. So we are working through that with the city. That has not changed. I don't have an update at this point, but that is going to require a joint venture of ourselves along with the city of Toronto, because the cost to reinstate it is significant, and the cost to operate it is significant. So we have earmarked some funds that we've received towards that, and we're trying to get some collaboration to work towards a more harmonized approach if we can. We also are looking at trying to bring in some sponsorship because we think that there's an opportunity there. We've spoken to both Amsterdam Brew House and the Queen Harbor that's coming along. We're looking at all possibilities, so it's not done in the water. The rink, the skating news. Here's what I can say to the skating news. It's what we said to yourself, Ryan, Ula, Neil, and Ed, who met with us this past week. We have, with the federal grant money, purchased the meat and potatoes of the skating rink. So what we did is secured the mobile components of the rink that we could invest in. But we have a shortfall of $350,000 to operate it. We still have not secured those funds. So without those funds, we can't bring it forward. We just do not have the ability to pay for it. So that's a piece that's still out there.
Great. Thank you for providing that information. I think there's a lot of promise in that. I know you're working really hard. I know Kathy's working really hard, but I'm looking forward to seeing what the future of Harbourfront Center will be. You have a lot of great stuff on deck, and I know we can expect a lot more. I don't see any other questions right now, so thank you again. I've put in the chat the 2 email addresses that were available on the website there. So if anybody has any further questions, they can contact that. We do have a minute, and somebody said they have. I have some comments. Okay, so if you have comments specifically about general housekeeping of public areas, feel free to reach out to the Harbourfront Center directly at one of those contacts. Massimo, thank you again for being a good partner with us, taking the time to join us this evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem. So on that note, we will move over to our guest speaker for this evening, Sim. She is the regional manager of the renowned Gerstein Crisis Center for Mental Health. They serve over 30,000 people in Toronto last year alone, and that includes many folks in our waterfront neighborhood. Their services include a 24-hour telephone support, in-person mobile crisis team, community support referrals, substance use crisis management. Sim herself has dedicated a dedicated career, I should say, to mental health, the mental health sector, with over 20 years. 3/4 of that career has been spent at the Gernstein 10 Crisis Center. She's one of 3 managers supporting the Toronto Community Crisis Service. So she's joined us this evening to tell us more about the wonderful work that they're doing to support folks, especially during a time when many people are facing mental crises or need an extra support, and how some of us who might need to access it, or people we know, how we can connect them to the right services. So Sim, thank you for taking the time to join our YQNA meeting. And I know you have a presentation, so I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Ryan. And thank you everyone for having us here today. And hopefully we can answer some of the questions that you may have. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Darna, who's also on this call, and she'll be co-facilitating this presentation with me. So I am going to just share my screen. Please let me know if you're able to see it.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Perfect. So like Ryan said, we're the Toronto Community Crisis Service. We're a community-based alternative for responding to mental health crises. But our home organization is the Gernstein Crisis Center. And the Gernstein Crisis Center has been embedded in the community in the downtown east for over 30 years, to be exact, since 1989. And they were the first of the pioneers of mental health crisis for folks living in the city. And I'm going to let Darna pick up and let her introduce herself and continue with the Gernstein Center. The floor is yours, Darna.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Darna Tavara-Daly, and as Sim said, I'm one of the crisis workers here at Gernstein Crisis Center. Incidentally, I've been around since day one. So last month was Gernstein 35th years. We started back in the 90s after the then mayor saw the need for community members to have somewhere to call as opposed to just going to the hospital. So even though we're not against hospital or medical system, it was just an alternative. So it's just another way of providing support for those who going through a hard time and want to connect with somebody for support. So as I said, Gernstein has been around for 35 years. And the way we operate is that we have a 24 hours crisis line, and it's listed, you can see that, and we also are a part of the 988 network, which 988 is suicide prevention helpline as well. So Gernstein is a part of that. Gernstein is also a part of that network. So the way we work is any individual who's having a hard time living in the city of Toronto can call us. Our phone is open 24 hours, day, evening, holidays, weekend, you name it. One can speak to a crisis worker on the line, and the next step is, if it seems like it's something that would be helpful, then the team can decide to go out and meet the person in person. We call that the mobile team, which simply means that 2 of our staff will go out and meet with the individual in the community, or wherever they feel it's convenient for them. So it could be, other workers' office, it could be at the park, it could be at a restaurant, it could be at a coffee shop. So that is negotiated. We also, part of our program is that we have a residential program. In fact, we have 2 residential programs. Where I work, which is a crisis program, an individual who's having a hard time, I just need to get away and be in a different surrounding, with staff and to get support, can come to our site, which is 3 to 5 days stay. There's also our sister program, which is called Gernstein on Blower, which someone can stay up to 30 days. And that will be someone who identifies female and homeless, has mental illness and homeless, as well as we have some beds that are geared towards or folks who have mental illness and legal involvement. And those beds is part of a larger system, but Gernstein also is part of that. With that, we also have some recovery and wellness programs. And, whether it's online, we did a lot of that during COVID. Right now, it's in person. So It's sort of more social type activity. It could be sort of a more formalized ROP program, which is again is just to help people with their wellness. Or it could be, you know, a walk-in at Hyde Park. It could be, you know, a group going to the to just to have coffee. So at least it's just a social. To somebody who is isolated and don't have any family, don't have any friends, sometimes it's good to have that connection. We also do a lot of community collaboration. We don't believe that we should be only the people giving service, but the more it is difficult to get service as it is. So, you know, if we have community collaboration, that person can get more support. And therefore it, you know, it will be more helpful. Part of what we do is also training and education. We have a team who, you know, who goes out in the community, do presentation on mental health and suicide prevention and some other topics. So that is also what we do. Okay. Again, the way we approach is from a strength base, which means that when we are supporting somebody, we find out you know, what their strengths are, and we hone in on that. We believe that everybody has a right, you know, to their own care. We believe that they, you know, should have equal access and equity, which means that it doesn't matter what, you know, what culture you're from or associated with. It should not matter. Empathy is something that we do, which it means that listening to the person, let them tell their story, give them a chance to, you know, talk to somebody who will listen to them. When we are sort of problem solving or trying to support the person, we want it to be a collaborative approach. So it's not just us deciding for the person what's good for them, but together we and the person in crisis can look at what's going to be most helpful for them. We also believe in a harm reduction approach, which is, you know, again, you know, everybody's having different struggles in different ways, and we want to be as helpful as possible. We don't want to dictate to someone what is good for them. And so, you know, again, we look at where people's at, what the struggles are, and try to best support them with those struggles. We do a lot of coordination, whether it's, you know, with their workers or whether they need to be connected with other community services. So that's part of what we do as well. Gerstein in a whole has a very large catchment area. So not just in the downtown, we go as far as Danforth and Victoria Park to the east. We go as far as towards St. Joe's a little further, Jen and Bloor, you know, some of all those areas that we go to. Some of our own TCCS teams, which Sim will talk more about, also cover some of those areas. So in essence, you have more than one avenue, more than one program that you can reach out to for folks who need some support.
Great.
And I'll let Sim take over from here, and later I'll speak again. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Darna. So this is just a snapshot of our crisis workers, you know, out meeting, you know, counselors and folks and in action on the phone. And so our first entry point at the Gerstein Center is by telephone. And so if you're concerned about somebody, you can call on your own, or you can encourage that individual to call for themselves. So it's 24/7. 2-on-1 works a little different for the TCCS project. So TCCS started off as a pilot project with 4 anchor partners, Taibu, who's in Scarborough, CMHA Toronto branch, the Two Spirited Peoples of the First Nations, which give an Indigenous response, and the Gerstein Crisis Center. So since this whole pilot project, we have become now citywide as of July 8th of this year. The city is going to do a hard launch. So you'll see advertisements on bus shelters and all those things by the end of the month, early October. We kind of just wanted to get into it before we started advertising. And so now the Gerstein Center supports, and during the pilot phase, had covered 51 and 52 division. And now with this expansion, the Gerstein East office is covering 53 and 55 division. And then I cover the West End, which covers 11, 13, 14, and 22 division. So we have a large part of the city. And then the TCCS project was one of the key components of the SafeTO 10-year community safety strategy. So really asking for a non-police response to support individuals experiencing a mental health crises. Oops. Sorry, my computer's sticking. So what is the Toronto Community Crisis Service? We're 24/7. We're voluntarily consent-based. We serve individuals 16 and up. So if there's children younger than 16, that's not something we can support, but we could support the parent in that. We come from a trauma-informed harm reduction lens. So really understanding someone's position in society, and able to support them through that. There's no wrong approach. We have connected with multiple different organizations to support that individual. As Darna said, we also offer the mobile crisis team. So once that call comes from 211, so say one of you want to call 211 and you're really concerned about somebody that you see maybe that is experiencing homelessness, maybe mental health crises, definitely call 211, explain the situation, give as much information as you can as like physical markers, how the person's dressed, anything that we need to know information is, does the person have a weapon? Because that's not something we could possibly respond to, but we can co-respond with the police. Does this person have a pet that we need to be aware of? And then once we get that assessment piece, 211 dispatches it to our team lead, which is called an access facilitator. And then that call is then directed to our team. And part of our service as well is not that we just see the person the one time. If they're open to it and give their consent, we can do a 90-day follow-up support and support them through that and connect them to longer term services. Also, we come from a very culturally relevant part of networks in the city. So if somebody is Indigenous, identifies as Indigenous, when you're calling 211, you can state that and they can refer it directly to the Two-Spirited People of the First Nations. And the Two-Spirited People of the First Nations covers the whole city of Toronto. So they're able to come out. Also, we have many languages spoken on the team and our crisis workers can offer support in those languages. And so here's just a high-level map of the city and how it's split up and which organizations covering. So the lighter green from Etobicoke Central to the beaches of East York are supported by the Gerstein Crisis Center. But we are split up to 3 different offices. So wherever that may lie, that's where the call 211 will direct that call. And all the dotted lines around the whole map are the Two-Spirited People of the First Nations. And so they cover everything. The dark area here from Etobicoke North to Don Valley East is covered by CMHA Toronto branch. And then the lighter green is Taibu. So if you have a loved one or somebody that you're concerned about in Scarborough, you can still make that call to 211 and just direct and let them know, like, this person lives at 123 ABC Drive. It's Scarborough at Midland and Shepherd, and they'll direct the call over to Taibu. So, 211, nice and easy number for us to call. So they are our dispatch partner. It's free. It's available in over 150 languages. If that language is not there, they will get a translator service on the phone. They can also, besides contacting us, if so, say, you just want to know information about, where's the closest food bank in your area? Because somebody says, I just need a food bank. You can call 211 and they'll direct you to that correct service and most appropriate service. So this is just a high-level map of how 211 works. So you can either call 211 or 911, and the dispatcher then will determine if we're required or police are required. So we respond to all mental health crises as long as the person's not in immediate danger in the sense of a harm to themselves or others, and or with a weapon. That would be a police matter, but the dispatcher will determine that. But also we could also do a co-response and support, say, some bystanders, and TPS, the Toronto Police, are dealing with the matter. So yeah, we get 911, you call, they do their assessment, you give consent to share, give your name because you're the referrer. They complete the assessment, they dispatch our team out, our team arrives on scene. So our teams are all marked. So all our vehicles are marked with the Gerstein Center through the TCCS project, I should specify. So you see that little icon that says Toronto Community Crisis Service on the bottom. Our cars and our vehicles are marked with that, as well as the Gerstein Center. So please don't tow us if you see us in your visitor parking. We're there dealing with a mental health crisis. Thank you. We do get a lot of parking tickets, but we're hoping that as people get to know us, they know that we're there for a reason. And also our staff are plain clothed, just like all of us on the call. However, we do wear a branded lanyard with Toronto Community Crisis with our ID on it. So we are trained to identify ourselves out on a call and with public members. So if you do want to have information, we can give our name and our employee number in case for follow-up. And so once the team arrives on scene, we'll support the individual and whatever that may look like. That might look like 90 days follow-up. That might look like accompanying them to the hospital, the ER for a psych assessment. It could be, coming back the next day with other services. And we usually do follow-up within 48 hours of initially meeting the person. So when should you call TCCS? So somebody who's saying, I just can't live anymore. I'm really, really I'm very upset. I don't think life is worth living. That's when to call us. Somebody has a suicide threat, but no immediate means or motive of ending their life. So they don't have a clear intent or plan. Person in crisis. So somebody who's just acting really irritable or in a different way than you usually have seen them. We also do well-being checks. So you haven't seen or heard from somebody in a while, we can do a door knock and see how they're doing. Disorderly behavior. So something that appears to that, is unusual. So somebody that you may see that sits at the same corner every day, but they're just not themselves as you usually see them. You can give us a call and we can come and see them. Verbal disagreements, we also advise, which is a request for referrals information. So just like I was talking about the food banks.
Sim?
Yep.
There's a question that came in that's
Okay.
relevant to that exact slide, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I can go back. Sorry, I can't see the chat as
It's
good.
no problem. It was so timely. So the question is your service a good place to call if someone's concerned about a condo neighbor wandering who appears to have dementia? Is this the best number, 211, or Bernstein is the best number?
I would call 211. Dementia is a little different than a mental health crisis. It kind of seems like this is their new baseline. So I think 211 would be the most appropriate, and they could refer you accordingly. Darda, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, they would know about the seniors crisis line as well. So maybe they would engage. So if they don't send it to Gerstein, they certainly will direct you as to which line would be better able to. However, if sometime the Gerstein will go out and take a sort of see if we can be support and then call another agency if it's something beyond our capacity.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so then our training curriculum overview is really all of our staff went through an 8-week intensive training run by the City of Toronto. All the 4 anchor partners went through that training. And so we may come from different walks of life. So we really recognize people with lived experience as employees, but also may have the academic background. It's a huge mix, but we made sure that everyone had the same core training to work frontline at the Gerstein Center. So our scenario training is also the same scenario training that Toronto Police Services also receive. We have the same facilitators and the same situations. Oh yeah, so I was just saying, so this is how our crisis workers look like. So plain clothed with those lanyards, you can see our vehicle in the background. Actually, these 2 crisis workers still work on the team. So they're still very active. You may see them. Amanda in the green dress, she actually works at Central, so you'd probably be seeing her if you do make a call. And so this is just program data from our 1-year evaluation. So this was from the pilot phase. So you could just kind of see our work in numbers. So this started from March 31st, 2022 to March of 2023. And so they received just over 6,800 crisis calls crisis calls, and 5,800 of those resulted in dispatches. We were able to divert 78% of those calls from Toronto Police. So really, Toronto Police, let them do their thing, they have their own calls. And so we were able to support on around the mental health crises. We made almost 2,000 referrals for mental health and substance use and housing supports. And our median travel time was 25 minutes. That can vary depending on if, just as like TPS, if we're engaged, say, at the at the hospital waiting for the person to be triaged. Also traffic, even though, your folks are in, I believe, 51 division. 52.
52.
You're literally down the street from us, but we know how Toronto traffic is. Sometimes it's faster to go on foot or jump on the subway. It just depends. So we try to get there as quick as possible. And yeah, how can we help? So I've shared this poster with Ula and Liz and Neil. It can be posted up around your condo buildings and share information. There's QR codes, so it can take you right directly to our Gerstein page, because we do offer other services. Like Darna said, we have the substance use crisis team. We have recovery programs, all sorts of things to support individuals. And oh, sorry. So this is, I didn't realize the slide was here. Sorry. The Gerstein Center offers all these variety of supports. As Darna said, the Gerstein on Bloor is a 30-day stay for justice involvement and high-risk female women who are identifying women who are experiencing a mental health crisis as well as homelessness. We are one of the national partners of the 988 suicide crisis line. So if people call the 988 number and identify that they're from Toronto, they may be connected to one of our staff. We also are part of the Focus Situation Table, which the Toronto Police run for elevated risk individuals in the community. We have the wellness recovery programs, as Darna had also shared. Here to Help is a very on the ground support. And they focus on the Moss Park and Church and Wellesley area in particular. And then we have the Toronto Public Library pilot, which our crisis workers are embedded in the Toronto Reference Library, as well as Lillian H. Smith, 5 days a week to really support people. Oh, and my info is right there. I saw Ula saying, yeah. Oh, perfect.
I just dropped some
thank you.
information we'll pull from your website as well.
Thanks, Ryan.
No problem. Thank you for this very informative presentation. I will say, until I was introduced to you guys.
So sorry, Ryan.
Oh, sorry, Darna. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, if committee members want to make referral, there's also a referral line, because sometimes the crisis line may be busy. It is 416-928-929-9897. So that's just, referral line. If nobody answers, there's an ability to leave a message and somebody will return. So that's for referral. That's not for clients. Clients use the crisis line, but this is for referral. Yes. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Darna. If there's nothing, there's a question there from Ula, who has her hand up. So Ula, once Neil unmutes you, there you go.
Yeah, I think this would be excellent contact information for us to give to our condo buildings representatives to give to the management, because sadly we are a day too late for somebody in our neighboring building. And we have people in need here as well. So can we add that to our list of things to do?
We will ask that. We'll add that to the YQNA list. I did see the poster when Sim showed it on the screen, and I think every condo should have that visible somewhere in their lobby for sure. So we'll do our part as YQNA to get that out to residents and work with our building reps to distribute that.
Okay.
And as soon as we receive our hard copies of the new publications that are coming out, we can also arrange to have those dropped off to you. Yeah, so we have like pens and stuff, magnets. We'll have new posters come hopefully by the early next month.
Excellent. We'll invite you to our next in-person event for sure too, so you can come and actually meet people and give those out physically yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it might not be myself, it might be one of my colleagues, but for sure we'll be there.
Excellent.
Is there any other questions?
I don't see anything else in, but I do want to thank you both. What I was going to say is I didn't know about your work prior to meeting you guys to prepare for this meeting. So one, it's great that myself and many others now know about this resource and that we can continue spreading the word about not just your good work, but making sure we can get this resource to people who need it in a timely manner. So thank you
Yes.
both for the work that you do, and thank you for sharing that here tonight with us.
And
Thank
thank you
so
for
much.
thank you for your invite. Nice to meet everybody, and I wish you a good night.
Yeah.
Take
Have a
care.
good night, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So the next item on our agenda is representatives from the TTC. As Neil's letting them on here, we all know our beloved 509 Harborfront streetcar, our main transit line across YQNA. Service has been temporarily paused. It's a vital service to many residents and visitors in the community. But since September 3rd, there has been replacement bus service. As Tim mentioned, I was unexpectedly on the news talking about it a bit. And as a transit rider myself, I've experienced the new bus service. So what I'll do is we have Lancefield Morgan, who is the manager for community and stakeholder relations, corporate affairs in the CEO's office, Justin Valmores, who's a community liaison officer of the TTC, and Christian, sorry, I apologize if I don't say your last name correctly,
No
or
worries.
you can correct me yourself. Christian is the senior planner at the TTC. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time and providing us an update. And I know you're interested in also getting some feedback from folks who might have some learning experiences as we're going through this phase. So, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us out here this evening. Thank you, Ryan, for the invite. What we'd like to do today is just walk you through the overview of the overhead work that is taking place right now for the 509 streetcar service. So I'll do a general overview of this piece of this project and do the intro. Our friend Christian will answer some of those deeper technical questions that if anyone has anyone that. And Justin is the primary lead on this project. So if there are follow-up things that we'd like to see or if people had questions that we need to get back on, Justin is going to be your primary lead for that conversation. I'm going to start sharing a screen. Hold on.
And as we wait for Lancefield to share a screen, just a reminder, throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to put that in the chat box. We'll make sure to get to that at the end. Even if it's a suggestion on something related to the service replacement with buses, please feel free to put that in the chat box, and we'll relay that message to the team here. Okay, Lancefield, I do see it up on our screen on this end.
Okay, thank you. I'll trust you, Ryan, to I can't see the chat if there are questions or comments as
I'll
we go.
definitely keep an eye on that for you.
Thank you. So this part of our work is really part of the state of good repair. What we are doing, and this is a project happening across the system, is we are upgrading our overhead and our streetcar tracks to bring them into good safe repair and to also modernize them. As we bring on newer streetcars and newer infrastructure, we just need to upgrade the system overhead. This work is being done in phases. So we started in September 3rd, after most summer events, just after Labor Day. And it will happen in multiple phases going into early 2025. You'll see substation work, some section breaks, again, modifications around Lower Spadina. You may not always see work because it just may be further up the line that has to happen. And then we get some smaller track and right-of-way repairs where we need to. If we see something, it's like, hey, we should fix that. We're going to take those opportunities to do that. So from November to early November, overhead work will be conducted from Union Station to Bathurst. We're prioritizing the work between Union and Spadina so that we can partially bring back the 509 in short order. That is one of our goals, to kind of maybe chop this up a bit so that we can get you part of that service back as much as we can. From late November to January 2025, you'll see additional overhead upgrades. That will be between on Fleet Street, between west of Bathurst and towards Strawn. So this is what the service is looking like today. We have the bus replacement on Spadina as we do overhead work along Spadina. You may be familiar with that project. We worked with the city to improve some of the dedicated bus lanes to improve that traffic flow because it is fairly congested in the downtown. We've got full bus replacement. We run a pretty active bus network, so it sees a bus every 2 to 3 minutes. And this is important that we run that many buses because a streetcar takes 2.5 times the personnel for a bus. So really, when we take out a streetcar, we really do need to replace with the system as best we can. Eastbounds operate in the right of way, and westbound serves curbside. And this is just, again, the design of the Cantory system. Sometimes there's poles in the middle. Getting in and out of traffic is challenging. So this is why you see a slight difference in this piece here. In October, you'll see the partial return to streetcar. And then you'll see some changes to the bus replacement system, 510. So we will do branch to King, and then we have one to Exhibition, the 510 and the 510C and the D. And maybe I'll ask Christian to maybe speak on a bit on the difference at this point, and then we'll carry on. Can we unmute Christian?
Sorry, I didn't realize I would be stuck. I just wanted to mute myself just in case Landfill was talking. So
Fair
yeah,
enough.
as Landfill is going through this, I just want to point out something very important, that what you're seeing on the screen here is sort of our baseline service that correlates with our service periods. So the TTC organizes its service around 6-week chunks, more or less, where we have opportunities to make those service changes. But as has been communicated and it's been in the media, there's a big pop star coming to town towards mid-November. So from the start of November towards the end of November, this work will be put on pause, and streetcar service will be restored along 509. And the details of exactly what will be operating on Spadina is still being determined through a larger working group with the city, emergency services, police, all that sort of stuff. So as Landfill is going through this, just wanted to point out that important note that there'll be, some special service during that period where we expect there to be quite an increase in transit ridership, tourists, all that type of stuff as Taylor Swift is in town. As well as a couple other big conferences. So just wanted to point that out. This is sort of just our baseline with extra service that'll be operating on top of that.
Thank you for that point, Christian. And certainly as we work those details out with the city, we'd be glad to come back out if we needed to share it with you, but we certainly will be sharing it with the association to make sure that everyone knows that this is a fairly major event. So it's a bit of all hands on deck across several city departments. So we'll be sure to communicate what those changes are, and you'll see those changes. You'll see change in signage. If there's special services on, you'll see our customer service reps, the folks in the red smocks that are out there sometimes directing. You'll see some of that as well. Then we can call it post Taylor Swift until January. We will continue back to our 509 service. We will divert the 511 Bathurst as we start some of that work and prep for that work. The bus replacement on the 510 Santana will continue as we wrap up that work and move into the next phase. So 510 Spadina is, as we do two sets of things. We do overhead work, replacing again the overhead wiring and the system there, and also doing some prep work at Spadina Station for the expansion of that station a bit north for expanded streetcars. So you would have seen, we hope you have seen, our poll cards that are up on bus stops, in shelters, large orange signs. Many of you would have gotten canvassing, door-to-door canvas dropped to condo buildings. We've done mail-outs to other groups. The fact that you're here this evening, that your association has been sharing information and inviting us to come and share more information with you, we appreciate that. You'll see the news releases, social media. Again, you'll see staff on site. We promote festivals, BIA festivals, other activities that go on. So if there's an opportunity for us to promote something when we happen to be sending out a mail out, we just can't do it for everybody. But if there's a bit of space we have that we can share something that's going on, we'd be glad to talk to folks about that again. And here's Justin's contact again. We will share this deck with Ryan, and he can share it out with the membership as they see fit. Or you can check on our website and you'll see the overhead work there. So that's what I would say at this particular point. Are there any questions for myself or for Christian or Justin?
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. There were two comments that came in, and
Please.
I'll just loop them together. Somebody had mentioned that it's difficult or hard for wheelchair users to get into the subway at Union after being dropped off at the bay in front and vice versa. Continuation is that they found it better just to walk or roll home from Union Station to Queens Quay West and Simcoe, but still finding it difficult to locate the elevators at Union. So I'm not sure if that's anything you can answer right now, but maybe some feedback you can take into consideration. Is there anything that you want to address with that one?
Yeah, no, I'll just say that we certainly appreciate that the interface with the temporary replacement buses at the corner of Bay in front there to get to Union Station is certainly not optimal, given the crowds, the barriers, the fact that it is somewhat of an indirect path. But I know, Justin, you and your team have been out doing some signage audits and whatnot, perhaps just a matter of signing that accessible path a bit better, even though it is granted a bit more circuitous. But as noted in the presentation, one of our major reasons why we were restoring that section between Union Station and Spadina on the 509 as of the 6th is just because we do realize that that's not really an optimal corner. And we want to get those streetcars back into the tunnel for that direct subway and elevator connection as soon as possible. So just a couple more weeks to bear with us, and maybe we'll, again, look at that signage, and we really appreciate your patience as we sort through all this.
Thanks, Christian. Another comment was just some feedback. Somebody said that they noticed a lot of buses grouped together, sometimes empty, so a lot of bunching. The suggestion here is can't the drivers slow down and spread out a little bit? And on the positive side, the large orange signs are great. And I have to agree that it's easy sometimes to find where you need to go because those signs are so large and easy. Any comments on the bunching that's happening with the buses and any work being done to address that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, again, I will say that we replaced 7 to 9 streetcars with about 30 buses. So, just given the congestion on Bay Street, even with that right-of-way running, sometimes the buses certainly do catch up to each other. But I can take that back to our transit control team to ask our supervisor watching the line to see if, operators are a little bit more cognizant of that fact and try to spread out a bit more. It's, a team effort to make sure the service operates as best as possible. And I can certainly bring that feedback. Yeah, streetcars as well. It's a difficult time occasionally, but our transit control team is always adjusting service where and when they can. And I'll bring that feedback back as well, saying that, our customers are noting that the buses are bunching up.
Great.
And as your previous speaker had noted, sometimes traffic in Toronto is a little tough. And we got caught in that too. If someone sticks out too far on the side, it blocks up the line. It can be tough. But as to Christian's point, these are things that we are aware of, but we will always take back and share with folks. And we encourage you to let us keep us in the loop. If you see something that's really problematic, a particular intersection or some area that maybe we might have missed because you live in the neighborhood and you know this one a little better, please reach out to us.
Great. I want to thank you guys for taking the time and meeting with us. I know it was a bit after the start, so you didn't get to do it in advance, but I think it was a great hybrid of you informing us what's to come. I didn't even realize the 511 is going to be coming into Union as part of the plan, so that's actually good news and maybe something that consider permanent. But thank you again for joining us and sharing this information. We'll definitely have you back maybe at our next meeting in November for an update and as things evolve in the quote-unquote post-Taylor Swift era in Toronto. Have a good evening.
Thank you very
much, everyone. Have a good night. Take care.
Next on the agenda, we'll be hearing from our 3 elected representatives. We are going to start with our federal representative. The House of Commons returned yesterday, so I'm assuming he's in Ottawa and he can validate that. Kevin Vong is the independent member for Spadina-Fort York. With that, welcome to the YQNA meeting. Kevin, I know this is not a strange place for you, and the floor is yours to provide us an update.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. I hope everyone had a great summer. I think what I'll do is I'll start kind of local, and then I'll make my way up to the macro level in terms of the different impacts federally on how it informs, what we've been seeing and experiencing in our city and in our neighborhood. So I saw a number of folks at Taiwan Fest at Harbourfront Center. So just off the bat, I wanted to say that was really great. Programming is so important, and I know there have already been questions about the ice rink, and I hope that is something that will return because folks like it. Let's talk about safety. There is something that impacted Toronto quite greatly, and that also impacts our riding. And that was actually the fact that safe injection sites within 200 meters of a school or a daycare will be closed on March 2025. And I wanted to talk about that because even though it was a provincial action, it impacts our community a great deal. And it has all levels of government involved. And there are a few myths out there that I think are important to address. First and foremost, not all safe injection sites are being closed, only those that are within 200 meters of schools. And I think it's important to make that clear. For our community, this specifically impacts the site at 168 Bathurst Street. This is the southwest corner of Queen and Bathurst. Now, I'll be honest, being a downtown community, I realize that I think Doug Ford probably is not the most popular. But on the issue of the opioid crisis, as someone who's actually been working on this file, the only level of government that has actually found the courage to challenge the status quo has actually been the Ford government. And I say that as the first person who actually dared to raise this in the House of Commons 2 years ago, back when it wasn't wildly accepted in terms of the very legitimate, valid safety concerns that have since been substantiated by the data that we've seen from Toronto Police and the open crime data. Now, it's important to remember that the opioid crisis claims the lives of nearly 1 Canadian every hour. And so in this last, we've been on here for over an hour now, 1 person has likely died. And unfortunately, that upward trend has only gotten worse. And the reality is harm reduction without treatment, nor any of the other pillars in an effective drug strategy, so that's specifically prevention and yes, enforcement, will not break the cycle of addiction. And so I will, and it probably isn't popular, but I think it is right to commend the Ford government response specifically on this issue, because it protects our most vulnerable, children. And it actually is coupled with investment into 19 new, what they called heart hubs, specifically deal with treatment and homelessness. So I bring that up because this is an issue that has been important to the community, relevant to the YQNA neighborhood, means a site at Lakeshore and Bathurst has its own supervised consumption, but that's specifically only for clients there in that facility. So it's a little bit different, even though that is across the street from the school. And I wanted to bring that up because I know I've gotten questions from folks in the neighborhood. There's still opportunity to advocate, obviously, for different changes. Expansion, I've heard a lot of, for example, to protect the waterfront school and the other school there as well, too. But that is something that we will continue to work on. Something that is federal but impacts our city. also is the issue of asylum seekers. And this is because asylum seekers occupy over half of Toronto's shelter spots. And this isn't, I think, a judgment call to say that on our government or our country's immigration policy. I'm not making a judgment on that, but simply it's just a statement of fact. And so I've been advocating for the federal government to give the city the funding that we need to be able to take care of what is otherwise a federal responsibility, and I'll continue to do so. And I think it's exacerbated what we've seen in terms of homelessness because those spots in those shelters are also being occupied by asylum seekers. Now, on a related note to immigration, I think it is also a factual statement to say that Canada's immigration system, as it is right now, is not working. It's not working for legitimate applicants. People are waiting often many times more on what is the official public standard for the Department of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship. Sometimes the published wait time is 3 weeks. I have people who are neighbors who are waiting over a year. For asylum seekers, our cities, and this is especially the case in Toronto, have been on the front lines of bearing the burden of a policy that is not set by the city. And unfortunately, we have also had some very high-profile failures in the vetting system. Folks may know there was a father-son duo who was arrested this summer luckily before they could execute an ISIS terror plot in Toronto. And less than 2 weeks ago, there were also, unfortunately, 2 incidents. On September 4th, we had a Pakistani national who entered Canada via a student visa and was arrested for planning a mass terror attack to kill as many Jews as possible in the US on the 1-year anniversary of October 7th. We also had someone arrested that subsequent day, the next day, in connection to IEDs, improvised explosive devices. So our system is not only not working for the people that it should, it's also unfortunately not vetting people who should not be getting into our country. And just so people have numbers to put this all in perspective, last year, Canada issued 682,000 study permits. If we cut out the weekends and holidays and we're looking at 250 working days, that means a study permit is being issued every 10.55 seconds. So again, I think whether it's more resources, I think a combination of that, as well as increasing the standard and the proper vetting, so that people who have been working hard to build a life here can build a life here without waiting exorbitant amounts of time, separation from family, the impact of mental health, and so on. But also people who want to do harm are prevented from coming to our country. And I think that's an issue that has had consequences for our city, but ultimately has been a federal responsibility. Now, I want to flag something because I know obviously the other orders of government, my colleagues will be speaking. And I want to flag something for the community to be aware of. And it's since October 7th, there have been over 1,700 demonstrations in Toronto. So what this means is the Toronto Police Service budget, they're burning through their budget, which was obviously set pre-October 7th. And so folks are working immense amounts of overtime. And yes, they're being paid, but they're also being burnt out. And so it's important that before this becomes a crisis, before they run out of money, the city needs to make a request, because I understand how strapped the city is, but other orders of government, and in this case, federal, cannot respond to a request that has not yet been made. And so I have been, and I will continue to advocate for the city to look ahead before this becomes a crisis and an issue of safety for our city. There's also, I think, a few other things that I'll address real quickly proactively. Listen, the reality is the direction that I think our country has been on, whether it is on the issue of affordability and housing. I've talked about safety. I've talked about safety specifically in the issue of the injection sites and that policy. And I've done my best to try to advocate for the federal government to listen to the experts, to listen to what addiction medicine clinicians have been recommending, which is reform a safe supply or outright abolishment, because in their expert opinion, they believe more harm is being done than good. But the government has not taken that position. So naturally, what am I going to do? Folks are not happy with the status quo, nor am I. So of course, I have reached out to the opposition to be able to work with them, because listen, repeating more of the same, hoping for a different result, is the definition of insanity. So I wanted to proactively address that because I know there's been questions. The final thing that I'll say, and I guess the theme has been security, is I got a few questions about a CBC article that came out that looked at votes. One of the functions that we have as MP is ultimately voting in the House. And my tally was a little bit lower than others, and I want to provide that context why. Nothing to hide. The reason why my vote is a little bit lower than the average is because there was the overnight marathon session, some might remember from earlier in the year, which was made to do the intention was to make a political statement. There are 100, so if you added those 134 to mine, I would be right up there, actually above average. But more importantly, I was not in the country. I was in Washington, D.C., and you can't vote from abroad. And why was I in D.C.? I was in D.C. Taking part in the Parliamentary Intelligence Security Forum to deal with issues of national security. And in fact, I actually spoke with a U.S. Assistant Secretary of State specifically on terrorism and some of the other issues that, unfortunately, have only gotten much more severe as that time has elapsed. So there are obviously a lot of issues that our country is facing. The House of Commons has resumed, and I will continue to work on all of the different issues that frankly people have raised to me, because what you bring to me informs my priorities in the House of Commons, and I hope folks will continue to do that.
Thank you for that report, MP Vong. Just a reminder to folks, please feel free to put any questions you might have in the chat. I haven't seen any questions come in, but I do have a question. It's related to something that we've talked about tonight, the Harborfront Center. I didn't realize this was a federal report last year that estimated that there's a need for about $105 million to sustain the existing campus there, or the existing facilities on the site. Last year, the federal budget announced $10 million. So that is a significant difference of what it needed to operate. Are you planning to do any advocacy work to ensure that the federal government is delivering for what is not just an important institution in the heart of our community, but also a national institution when people come to Canada, or when people come to Toronto, sorry, that is a place right proximity to many other tourist destinations that they would visit. Is there anything that you're doing on that front?
Yeah, absolutely. So Harborfront Center is obviously is a gem, not just for our community, but also for our city. And so when the ice rink was unilaterally removed from that list of things that was being renovated, modernized, I hosted that emergency town hall, and I'll continue to actually advocate for the federal government to give our community, but the city, also the funds that we need to ensure that there's a good state of repair for Harborfront Center, but also the funds that it needs to be able to invest in more. Because for those of us who live downtown, and we don't have backyards, Harborfront Center is our backyard. It was our skating rink, right? And so these amenities, ensuring it has the capital it needs to not only maintain but grow. So we have more great programming like Taiwan Fest, like other things that we saw earlier on that's already scheduled and programmed with Waterfront BIA and Harborfront Center and everything that the community has to offer.
Great. One last question here that came in. Somebody said, or they're asking, would you help stop the expansion of the island airport? And obviously you've probably seen there's been some news, because to meet federal regulations, they're going to have to add extensions on each end of the runway. And that's, I know we're going to have a little bit more of a discussion of that later tonight. What's your position on this right now? And maybe you want to answer this question directly to this person here. Will you help stop the expansion of the island airport?
Sure. Just real quickly, Massimo, I'm looking forward to when, meeting the new CEO and being able to sit down and talk about what Ryan raised, so I can bring that to the House of Commons and advocate to the federal government. With regards to the island airport, folks may know there is a mandatory requirement from Transport Canada related to the runway. And so the path that it's moving on right now, in order to fulfill the requirement mandated to them, which is related to safety, would mean that the tripartite agreement, which is governed at all three levels of government, needs to be reopened. Under its current form, they cannot address what is required from the federal government. And so instead of waiting till 2033, it's something that they're going to have to address earlier on. And so what I think has been absolutely important is that our community has a voice and a say in that. So if for example, I've heard this in terms of the people are concerned about the emissions, the environment, and I'm mindful of time, Ryan, but maybe we can find some later time to talk about this specific issue. But just to close off, the tripartite agreement not only prevents the matter of the RISA and the runway emergency safety there, but specifically also, for example, if they wanted to bring in hydrogen planes as an example. So the tripartite agreement actually needs to be addressed. And I know people have strong views about the future of the island airport, but I wanted to put it in context in terms of all the different aspects. And for me, fundamentally, whether it is Harbourfront Centre, the island airport, or anything else, I believe that our community deserves and must have a say in what that future looks like. And I'm going to continue to fight to ensure that our community's voice is heard in Ottawa and Toronto and wherever it needs to be heard.
Great. Thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you probably just returned to Ottawa this week, so appreciate you joining us and sharing that update. I will put your office contact information in the chat, so if anybody wants to connect with you on any other issues, they are welcome to do that. Thank you again, MP Vong. Moving down the agenda, we're going to go from the federal government now over to the provincial government. Again, no stranger to the YQNA. Our MPP, Chris Glover, is here to provide an update and take questions. And just a quick reminder, if you have questions or comments, please feel free to put that in the chat. Mr. Glover, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Ryan. And you know what, thank you for hosting this meeting, and thank you for taking over the chair of the YQNA. It's really wonderful, and you're doing a fantastic job. And you know, thanks to all the board members. The YQNA, of all the neighborhood association meetings that I attend, you generally have the highest turnout. So you know, congratulations on that. And it speaks to the importance of the issues that we're facing along the waterfront. I live not too far. I'm over in Fort York. And I also want to thank you for these meetings. I try to come in early as I can because I always learn new things. Sim Shukla, you know, it was great to have her in that discussion about the Toronto crisis response. The Gerstein Center, I actually used it years and years ago. I was a high school teacher, and there was a student who I really feared was suicidal. She started giving stuff away, and there were just some other indications. And I called in the Gerstein Center, and they sent in 2 therapists to work with her that day at the school. And it was a life-saving service that they provide, you know, in that case many years ago, but to this day as well. So it's a really wonderful service, and it's great that you're letting more people know about it. I will say that I disagree with the MP Vong's assessment of the Ford government, and especially around the addiction crisis and the homelessness crisis. You know, going back in 2018, the first thing he did when he got in office, or one of the first things, was to cut $230 million from mental health supports. They cut healthcare, they cut public health funding. At the beginning of the pandemic, our Toronto Public Health Department was dealing with a $12 million cut. And in the meantime, over the last 6 years, the opioid crisis has just exploded. There's now 2,500, as you know, and I do agree with MP Vong. It's an absolute travesty what's happening. 2,500 people a year dying, you know, of opioid and other addictions, and it's compounded by an exploding homelessness crisis. You know, it's not clear. The number of homeless is always difficult to count, but it's somewhere, you know, the most recent number from the government is 234,000. Although that may include people who are couch surfing, and we see it everywhere in our community in tent encampments. There are 10,000 shelter spaces in the city of Toronto. They're all full, and you know, there's just no place for people to go. And it dates back, like this crisis, the homelessness crisis, the opioid epidemic. These have been decades in the making, and we need, you know, really strong government action to deal with them. And it's got to start with housing. You have to have supportive housing for people with mental health and addiction issues. And I was speaking with a woman from CAMH who's been working in this field for 30 years. And she said, you know, even if you put somebody into, you know, a forced treatment center and you keep them there for a year, you know, they may do a bit better, but unless they deal with the underlying trauma that led to the addiction, then they're going to go right back to it. It's like the 12-step recovery for AA. You need to deal with the underlying cause of somebody becoming addicted. And so, you know, we need treatment. And, you know, the Ford government announced that they're going to, you know, open up some treatment centers. It's a start, but it barely restores the funding that they've cut. And it's not going to be of the scale to deal with the opioid epidemic that we have right now. We need a real investment. And we also need to deal with the homelessness crisis, because you cannot overcome an addiction if you're sleeping in a tent in a park. Like, it's just not going to happen. On this front, I've been hosting a homelessness work group for a number of years. I'm starting it up again. We're going to be meeting next Tuesday, September 23rd at 7 p.m. Let's see, we'll put out the, you know, I'll make sure that, Ryan, you get a copy of the Zoom link if people want to Zoom in. We will be having a number of people, you know, speaking. We've got some panelists. And I would say also, like, on community safety, it's a travesty. Like, having people homeless makes our communities unsafe. Having people with mental health and addiction issues without supports makes our communities unsafe. And we need to address those in order to make our communities safe again. And it's not a, you know, either our communities safe or we're saving lives of people with addictions. We have to do both. You know, it's the only response that will actually work and address the crisis that we're experiencing. Let's see, I wanted to talk a little bit about the tourism sector. And, you know, it's an $86 billion sector in Ontario. And a big part of it is right in our riding. 17 million visitors a year visit the downtown waterfront. And there's all kinds of festivals. There's the Caribbean Carnival Festival. That has 2.3 million visitors a year. There's the Indy, which is 150,000 visitors. The Chinatown Festival, 250,000 visitors. You know, Ontario Place, you know, even in its current state, is hosting 2.9 million visitors a year. So we are fortunate enough to live in the place that everybody wants to come to, and that a lot of people do come to. And we do need to make sure that, you know, they have the supports, that the services down here and places like Harbourfront Centre have the supports that they need. I was advocating with the provincial government for the Caribbean Carnival. They seemed non-responsive, but they have agreed now to up the funding for the Caribbean Carnival. It was absolutely a pittance compared to the revenue that they generate, including tax revenue that they generate for the province. So we're just asking the provincial government to reinvest some of that tax revenue. And it's the same with the Harbourfront Centre. It's a major tourist attraction in the downtown waterfront, and the government needs to reinvest some of the revenue that they generate from it back into maintaining the Harbourfront Centre. Let's see. Oh, and Ontario Place. I'll talk a little bit about that. Obviously, this has been, you know, an ongoing battle. It's still going on. There was I don't know if you heard about it, but at TIFF, there was a movie release called Your Tomorrow. Yep. It's an observational documentary. I saw it on opening night. It played 2 other times in TIFF. It's absolutely wonderful and not at all what I expected. I expected, you know, a bit of a political movie. It's not. It's a movie that is about how the West Island left, you know, to its own devices. The wilderness took over, the wildlife came in, and you know, and a community of people, the community moved in and just started using the site and using the beach. And, you know, every scene in this movie that's shot in the West Island, you hear the incredible bird song. You know, it's absolutely, there's 850 trees that we are desperately trying to save. And we've continued to dig. So on the political front, to try to save this thing that is captured so well. And if you do get an opportunity, I highly recommend the movie Your Tomorrow. we've done some digging, and we got the request for proposals form that proponents had to fill in order to put in a proposal for the redevelopment of the Ontario Place site. And it's an absolute travesty of any fair process. The government says that any ideas that are presented in the proposals, they can keep them without compensation. They could choose a proponent who didn't actually go through the application process. They waived any conflict of interest, and all proponents had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. So it's like, this is the absolute opposite of what a fair process would be. We're looking into an investigation into this process because it's absolutely wrong, and it's wrong for us because this is a public asset, and the latest tally is 1.5 billion tax dollars that we're going to be forced to invest into this redevelopment. It's an absolute waste of our money. So we're continuing to fight. We're asking for another investigation into this proposal process, and we've also got the Auditor General report coming. I'm hoping this report comes out soon. I thought it would have come out a few months ago. I know they started doing the research on it last November. I'm hoping when we asked for a Greenbelt investigation by the Auditor General, the report that came back was so scathing that the government had to back off on paving over the Greenbelt. I'm hoping this report is similarly scathing. Let's see. I'll just talk about a few of the things that my office and I have been doing at the end of summer. We really celebrated the end of summer. We had an end of summer barbecue, and I know some YQNA members were there. We had a Bollywood dance party at the Bentway studio. It was our first. We're going to be doing it again. It was an absolute blast. If anybody, we're going to do it again next year. If anybody wants to learn some Bollywood dance moves, it's an opportunity to come out and have some fun. Let's see. And kudos to the Waterfront BIA for a really successful waterfront festival last week. And I've got on my website and then in my update, we've got a list of fun activities in the community. And one of the big ones to watch for this coming weekend is the dominoes, the Bentway dominoes. 8,000 human-sized dominoes on a 2.4 kilometer route, wending its way through the downtown core. It's going to be so interesting to watch. Okay, and I'll close it off there.
Thank you. I know Ula has her hand up, and there's two questions. Just really quickly, can you repeat the name of the movie, the West Island movie, so everybody has it there?
It's Your Tomorrow.
Your Tomorrow? Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure if you go to the TIFF website, there'll probably be more information about the film itself there. Yeah. Ula, did you want to ask your question to MPP Glover?
Actually, about this film, it's made by a good friend of mine, Ali Weinstein. And I suggested we have a special screening on the waterfront. And if anyone has a good idea where we can do that, because I think it's important that everybody who lives, well, everybody in Toronto, but especially the waterfront, we should see it. And I haven't yet seen it myself.
You know what, Ula? I have been looking into that, and let's talk. You and I will talk after this meeting, and we'll see if we can arrange something, because I would love to have a screening in the, in the downtown core here.
Excellent idea. Thank you for that. MPP Glover, there's a question here about the opportunity to relocate and close supervised consumption sites to ensure that individuals still have access in our community. Is there anything you wanted to speak to on that? And the question was addressed to you and Councillor Malik, but I'll let you, since you have the floor right now.
Yeah, I'm just reading the question. You know what? So I've been speaking with the director of the supervised injection site. I will say, she has said that they may not be able to provide all of the services that they're providing right now, but they do intend to provide healthcare services. And, exactly what that's going to mean, they're still working out, because they're still working out, trying to get the details of what this means. She had planned to have a public meeting on September 5th before this announcement was made. She's postponed that because she wants to see what this will actually mean for the future. People are going to ask questions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions in, and we're a little bit over time.
Yep.
I did put your constituency office email address in the chat. Of
Yep.
course, if anybody has any questions, I know you'll welcome them to reach out to the office. Also, if there's anything that comes to our attention, that's a provincial matter, we'll definitely be able to relay that to you. And thanks again for joining us and being a supporter in front of the YQNA.
Absolutely. Let me just say one other thing. I'll shout a quick hello to Ed Hoare. I met him. I've got a kayak
Yes.
that I keep on my balcony, and I saw him out kayaking the other night, and it was it's so beautiful. Anybody, if you can get out kayaking or canoeing on the waterfront, talk to Ed. He knows how to get it done. You guys have a wonderful night.
Thanks, Mr. Glover. Next up, as I mentioned, another friend of the YQNA, our counselor, a city councilor for our ward, but also Toronto's deputy mayor, Asma Malik. Thank you for joining. I will say, Councillor Malik was one of the first folks who reached out to us directly, and she said, "Hey, you're a new chair. Come into our office. Let's meet." So I want to thank you for taking and providing the opportunity to engage with YQNA and myself as a new chair. And with that day, we discussed some really critical issues. So I'll hand the floor over to you, Councillor Malik, to share some of maybe what we discussed and some other stuff that you're working on for the ward.
Thank you very much. And I again just want to echo the thanks from everyone, first and foremost for joining the meeting, for sticking with us. And I know the agenda is really useful, and we're engaging in really important discussions. And I'm also mindful of the time and really grateful for everyone who is still on the meeting with us. I want to thank you and welcome you, Ryan, to the role of chair, and also to echo the thanks and appreciation for you stepping up and stepping in, and again, doing an incredible job. I was really glad to be able to connect with you and members of the YQNA executive, and to continue with our commitment to having regular in-person check-ins with the YQNA team on priorities that are on your mind, and of course for my office to have a presence at all of your meetings, and of course always to be available to you and members with any issues that come up. I'm looking forward to continuing to support the organization and our work together. And I also want to just take a moment to again recognize and thank Angelo for his incredible contribution to the community, to our city, alongside the YQNA team, has really been such an important champion and set an example for that leadership in the neighborhood and around the issues here, especially in a neighborhood that continues to grow and to change, and to ensure that the YQNA continues to be in a good position with your and for you to be able to take on that leadership, Ryan, and drive it with that same enthusiasm and care, and that is really exciting for all of us. I know that we are mindful of time, and there was a few specific updates and items that we had discussed in our meeting that I know it was important for members to be able to hear from me. And so I'm going to focus on that, and that is the runway and safety area consideration around the airport. I know Harborfront Center was on the mind of members and yourselves, Reese Street Park, and the 509 streetcar work. And I know some of these have already been touched on. So hopefully this continues to kind of strengthen the contribution and the perspective from the YQNA on this. And I'll begin with the runway and safety area. As you have heard here, and I have understood that folks have mentioned it, there is a new federal airport safety requirement, and I am referring to my notes so I don't miss anything, and I'm also sticking to time. And that safety requirement and obligation needs to be met by all airports across the country, and that includes Toronto's Island Airport. The requirement is called the Runway and Safety Area. For short, folks are referring to it as RISA. And the runway and safety area is a Transport Canada safety requirement. And it has been set very clearly that the deadline for implementation at the island airport is mid-2027. And the intention of RASA is to reduce the severity of any damage to a craft if it overshoots or overruns the runway through increasing the safety area beyond it. And that's really the crux of this requirement. And Ports Toronto is reviewing the options to meet this requirement, and Transport Canada has been really serious about this deadline. And the City of Toronto is a signatory to the tripartite agreement that governs the island airport along with Ports Toronto, and Transport Canada has a role in the decisions that are made related to that agreement. And for me, my focus is on achieving the safety requirement at the airport and having that implemented in the quickest and most cost-effective way possible to ensure that for everyone who uses the airport, works there, and especially the community around it is as safe as possible. And that is really important for me, and that is what I have shared with you and YQNA members, and more broadly as well. And the safety requirement needs to be fulfilled through a specific amendment to the tripartite agreement. And that is also has been something that I know has been a shared understanding in terms of the implementation of this requirement. And for me, and I've said this, since the very start and continued to, in terms of the discussions around any discussions on the future of the island airport need to be done through a transparent and democratic process, a thorough review that is in the interests of and for the city's contribution to be in the interests of the city and our communities. We know that the tripartite agreement, that when it was first negotiated, took several years, and that was in a much less complex environment that didn't have this level of community and activity on our waterfront, and that we have to be looking at discussion on the future of the airport in that context. And one of the things that was really critical in the conversations that we had shared was that this waterfront is home to so many of us, and it's also a shared public asset, right? And that has to be part of those considerations. And through years of planning and implementation, our waterfront is being revitalized. New parks, public spaces, better connections to the water, and new communities that are being built and also growing along the waterfront. And any decisions about its future need to be made in that context. On the fulfillment of this safety requirement, the city will be hosting a public meeting at the Enercare Center on September 24th. That's coming up next week. It's at 7 p.m. and there is also an online survey that can be filled out. And this is an opportunity to learn about the safety requirements, the considerations from the city, and also additional feedback on this. And city staff will take this feedback and finalize recommendations that will be going to executive and city council in this next cycle. And so there is an opportunity there to, again, continue to make your perspectives known to council and to raise this at those opportunities. And I know that our office had shared with the YQNA the information about the public meeting next week, earlier this week, I guess yesterday. And for that to be shared out more widely, it's also a bit on my social, and we did share it out on Friday in our newsletter as well. And so your participation on that is really critical. I will move on to the Harbourfront Center. And, again, a shared commitment, and thank you to the YQNA's leadership when it has come to this critical cultural institution at the heart of our waterfront. And since the start of my term, I focused on two key areas of improvement for the Harbourfront Center. First of all, making sure that as a city, we are regularly engaged with the Harbourfront Center, focusing on improving and modernizing that relationship and reviewing ways that the city, as having a big stake in Harbourfront Center, continues to support it in ways that are connecting to the local community and also having that sense of welcome and invitation to everyone from across the city to be able to enjoy the waterfront. Of course, the decisions around the skating and the way that happened were not acceptable. And that was very clear in terms of my engagement with the Harborfront Center. And we have to be able to look ahead to how we improve those mechanisms and the work that is done together with the neighborhood and the community. And that has been my highest priority, which has been to continue to engage with the YQNA and broader community stakeholders for a regular forum with the Harborfront Center and the community for dialogue and collaboration. I know it's really wonderful that Harborfront Center has, through the many years, brought updates to the YQNA. And I heard very loudly and clearly from the community that wasn't a sufficient way for us to be able to engage with the Harborfront Center, that the community wants to be the strongest champion in terms of the future and the contributions of the Harborfront Center, and to be able to support that. And what has been really encouraging is the leadership and the enthusiasm that the new CEO has shown for this sort of engagement and the connection to community. I had the chance to meet with the new CEO, Kathy Loblaw, as have city staff, and we agreed to a commitment to increase and create that opportunity for what I know the members of YQNA and other folks have been really pushing for, which is like a community liaison committee, which is so important for the success of that shared coordination and collaboration and of the institution itself. And we are engaging the YQNA in what that will look like. We've also discussed the importance of skating returning to Harborfront Center and seasonal skating in particular, and working to see what measures and resources can be brought to bear in that regard too. So really focusing in on some of the very grounded kind of actions that we can take together. And of course, as was raised by you, Ryan, that there are some very critical questions just about the ongoing operations and the support, the state of good repair for the Harborfront Center. And, in their last federal budget submission, I was really glad to ensure that the city was able to provide that advocacy and come in behind their request and express that support. And we saw the outcome of that. The final thing I will just say about the Harborfront Center, and I know it's a shared sentiment for members of the YQNA, was we did get to participate in a number of the summer events there, including the 50th celebration of the Harborfront Center, and was really encouraging with some of the new leadership and the engagement with the neighborhood, and kind of turning the page on what that relationship is. That I heard community members and neighbors saying that it felt like the old Harborfront Center, where there was that emphasis on culture and art, but also community and recreation and that connection to the waterfront. And I think that's really exciting place for us to be, and a huge opportunity that we share. I'll move on to Reese Park. And again, these critical public spaces on our waterfront that are really important to us. And since that original design competition in 2018, there have been a lot of changes, which the YQNA has been looped in on. I know that you have been kept up to speed on what has been happening there. Right now, through a new design process, we are looking to ensure that we're responding to the current context and making sure that this park and this green space includes the right, proportion of green space, play, seating, active and passive areas, and more. And I know that that's been a big priority for the community in the area. And as we see how folks are using those spaces, Love Park has opened since the first, call out had gone for Reese into the world for Reese Park. And to be able to see this as an opportunity in this particular context. All this needs to be tied together through a design process that allows for creativity and innovation. And again, learning from the last few years about what that looks like, and more details on the process. I'm looking forward to being able to share them shortly. And as always, there will be a very extensive public engagement process on this design. It is so critical, and it's also one of the last spaces and opportunities that we have on the central waterfront for something like this. And I know that there's a lot of care and interest in it that we are looking to honor, and I'm excited about. The final piece, and I know that a TTC staff were on the call and did share an update with you, and I took feedback on how the bus service is working. I'm in regular my office and myself are in regular contact with the TTC staff as this project moves forward, and I've prioritized restoring service as quickly as possible and ensuring we have additional service through the periods of major events, including Taylor Swift, as we kind of head deeper into the fall. I want to just mention, some of the work that was done around the Spadina maintenance and construction. And I had been pushing TTC to make sure that those measures were put in place as soon as possible, and that we were being mindful of the busy route that Spadina is, one of the busiest in the city. And the way that that was approached was not acceptable to me. And I worked quickly to implement the priority bus lane in order to, improve the traffic and transit times, which had ballooned to almost an hour, and just, the frustration of seeing a bus after bus stuck in traffic with cars and not having the clear path for emergency vehicles or for cyclists. And the priority bus lane has been a success in terms of cutting down those times by at least half, and also providing a clear route to emergency vehicles, and also for vulnerable road users like cyclists as well. And for me, the most important thing was that we take every lesson from the Spadina experience, and that we're applying it most immediately to Queens Quay, and that we continue that proactive approach to look at all options, and to be also very clear and specific about the way that our downtown routes are not like routes in the other parts of the city. And I've been pleased with the way that TTC has been responsive and incorporating those lessons into the 509 streetcar, and as we look forward to other work in the future. And as always, my office will take any feedback on this work and work with staff to address any issues that are coming up and that you're seeing. And I will leave it at that. And whatever time you want to give to questions, I'm happy to take them.
I apologize that we're running a bit over, but I do want to make sure that folks have the opportunity. There were a couple questions that came in, obviously on the very popular topic of the airport. I'll try and collectively put the questions together, but essentially it's saying there that if the airport doesn't bill RISA, then it can't be operational, and that might be a mode and method to actually not having an airport on that site again. In the same sentiment, why invest the money right now if the tripartite is going to be reopened in the future? Could you speak to a little bit about that direction, rather than pushing and having RISA just to keep the airport operational for the time being?
Thanks, Ryan, and I appreciate the question. So Transport Canada has set out this safety obligation. They have set the timeline to mid-2027, and that safety is critical. And we have a commitment to the agreement to 2033, to 2033. And that is the agreement that exists right now. All three members of the tripartite, the signatories, have agreed to that. And Transport Canada has been very clear and unequivocal about this timeframe to 2027. What I will say is that this is not a surprise. In the airport master plan from 2018, RISA is in there. It is referenced, and it was and the airport was alerted that this would be coming forward. Some of the specifics of the regulations didn't land until maybe 2 years ago, I guess 3 years ago. And so there was the opportunity there. So some of the compressed time frame, that question has to go to ports around their movement on this, but the time frame has been very clear, 2027, and the midpoint of the year. Transport Canada has been very clear and not budging on that. And safety is the highest priority for me. And for me, it's to ensure that we meet that safety obligation, and the city is interested in making sure that the operations are meeting the Transport Canada requirements.
Thank you. A question that was posed earlier on before you joined was more about very local as issues, and some of it's kind of feedback maybe you could take away to your office. More dog feces being seen at H2O Park. Is there any consideration for bikers to dismount when they're on the boardwalk? And what is the policy in motorized bikes in the bike paths along the waterfront? And the final sort of question from this person, which is something that, because there's been a new store on Queens Quay, is anybody looking at the impact of cannabis and alcohol store expansion? And I know that was a lot, so feel free to address however you want, and I can.
Okay, so just recap for me the question.
So, dog
feces
being cleaned up, bike policy, whether that's boardwalks and motorized bikes and bike lanes, and then the impact of expansion of cannabis and alcohol sales.
Okay. So on the dog issue, this is a persistent issue in our downtown, right? This is a big priority, and so much of this is the vast majority of dog owners are very responsible. They're cleaning up after their pets, and we really do have to ensure that education and that encouragement and that peer pressure also comes from other dog owners about this issue. It also points to, something that we experience in our downtown, which is dog off leash areas, the availability of them and the accessibility of them, and how we address that. And one of the important things that is coming forward to City Council is a master plan on dog off leash areas to inform how they are distributed across the city and how they're responsive to the needs. And of course, our downtown neighborhoods are a priority in that. And if there's continual kind of feedback on how we improve the location of those, please do send that. We will share that on as that report lands. We're looking at that probably end of this year, beginning of next year, in terms of its recommendations coming forward to the city. And I will also say that the city has pet-friendly guidelines for developers and new developments. And for me, in any conversations that we've been having around new development, it's to see how those pet-friendly guidelines are actually being incorporated. That means dog runs, pee pads, all of that sort of stuff, using the roofs and other spaces within a development to be able to address this, so that there are, very reasonable options for pet owners as well. So this is a key issue. And then, of course, we'll continue to ensure that, street maintenance and all of that is a priority on our waterfront. The issue of e-bikes is a really critical one. And right now we have a report tracking to the end that should be coming to council by the end of the year, which is about ensuring that there is a clear education campaign that includes a multi-stakeholder table about the issues, challenges, and actions that need to be taken around ensuring that that micromobility is being used on our roads in the appropriate way, right? Not on sidewalks, not whipping through stop signs and red lights, and also endangering other vulnerable road users, especially when it comes to elderly and young kids. But I've been on sidewalks where you're sideswiped and it's a really close call, and that's not acceptable. And these are vehicles that only police services kind of have the capability right now to stop and to address. is around permission from the provincial government for a change in regulations and rules around micromobility. So the piece around fines, and also for business couriers to be licensed and to be required to be insured by their employer and by the businesses that need them. And so I'm happy for us to send this information as well for you to share with members and to look closely at what the progress has been around that. I'm happy to. I was just speaking about this earlier today. And then the final item was around, sorry.
Cannabis and alcohol sales.
Yes.
I guess they're mostly concerned about the Ford government's obviously expanding sales of alcohol in different venue spaces. And then we have a new cannabis shop here on the waterfront. The particular question was, is the city looking at the impact on this and potentially what work might need to be done to address some of that impact?
Yeah, and on the alcohol sales and the permissions around that, that is a provincial responsibility and a choice that's being made around that. Of course, illegal cannabis shops and others like that is an issue, and that's something that has to be looked at through a collaboration between levels of government. I know that that's something that the city has contended with for a while, and using the tools and levers that we have to address that. I think what I also hear from the question is, do those rules and that consideration need to be refreshed, right? Given that now we have had the rules around cannabis sales for a while, right? And to be able to assess what that actual impact is to our main streets and to other retail in the area and to the kind of engagement with the community. And I think that those are really good questions for us to take back. And I'm happy for us to also check in with where the city is on some of that, review of our rules and our approach.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I know that was quite a few topics that we did, and I apologize again that we are a bit over time, but thank you for staying on and taking these questions. I'd put your office email address in the chat, so if anybody has any further questions or wants to connect with the counselor, please feel free to contact our office. Thank you again.
One thing I will just say, Ryan, I'm just looking at the questions in the chat, and I know they cover such a big range of concerns and issues when it comes to the airport on the island. I do really encourage everyone to be present at the public meeting, to fill out the survey, and of course that we will share the information as the reporting on fulfilling this safety requirement tracks to council. And there are a number of opportunities to be bringing some of these questions and these areas of concern forward. All of them are really critical and important, especially as we think about the future of the airport. When it comes to the runway and safety area, my commitment is that we do this in the quickest and most cost-effective way possible, right? And that we are looking at all of these other issues in their proper consideration.
Thank you again. Thank you for that and for working hard for our community.
Thank you.
Before we close this evening, we have Ed Hoare, who's a friend of the YQNA, but also part of the YQNA. He's part of Waterfront for All as well. And he wanted to provide an update from the organization on the island airport as well.
Thanks very much. I hope everybody can hear me. I'm going to be really, really quick. And thanks very much, Ozma, for your summary of the situation on RISA. I've been on the phone. There's been discussions with the mayor in the last couple of days, and I just want to please ask everybody to show up for the meeting on Tuesday or respond to the survey if you can. And here's the reason why it's absolutely critical. We're hearing, just to give you the chronology, the meeting's on Tuesday. There's going to be a report to executive committee a week later on October 1st. The report will be done in a big hurry, and it will go to executive committee sort of within days of the meeting. So if you say something at the meeting, it'll get to the executive committee a week later. That is very important. The reason is that both Porter and the Island Airport people, that's Ports Toronto and Newport, who operate the terminal, have been lobbying very hard to say that there should be an extension of the tripartite agreement. In other words, that the airport should continue to exist for many decades into the future. There should be no discussion as to its future. We should just go automatically to a renewal, possibly for 99 years, possibly for 50 years, we don't know. And they also seek a kind of a carte blanche to enlarge the airport enormously, possibly to allow jets. Olivia Chow was concerned that she may not have the votes to prevent that on a council meeting on October 9th. It's very important, I think, that people say we need to, dealing with the, let's just deal with the runway safety area, the RISA, not any of these other issues. They require a lot of consultation, a lot of study. There should be no attempts. Council should not approve that these issues all go into a kind of a grab bag, a kind of a carte blanche to the airport people to do whatever they want to get an extension or whatever it is, because what that would mean is that the city would essentially be saying, we give up the right to discuss what should happen to the airport over the next 9 years between now and 2033. That is, I think, unacceptable to everybody, but that is, there's been an enormous lobbying push on it. The mayor is concerned that she might not have the votes. The way you can help is show up at the meeting. Please come on Tuesday and make your voice known. Thanks.
Thank you for providing that, Ed. I know we are over time again, so feel free to contact any of the elected representatives on any of these items and matters. We will send out information by email to everybody. Neil, that's something we can do with the survey. And thank you, Councillor Malik, for putting the survey in the chat as well. We'll email that out to everybody with the Eventbrite as well for the event. So
it's also, I believe, on the YQNA website. I asked Neil to put it up today.
Okay.
I think it's there. Is that right, Neil?
Neil?
No, it's not posted yet, but I'll put it up.
Put it up.
So we'll put it up in a few places, and we'll send it out to folks to make sure that.
So I hope to see people at the meeting, and looking forward to talking to people then.
Yep. Thank you, Ed. And yes, we'll definitely do our best to socialize that and ensure that many of us in the community can voice our concerns and interests on this topic. To wrap it up, just a quick FYI to save the date. Our next YQNA meeting will be held on Tuesday, November 12th. We are looking at doing an in-person meeting, and we will have more details to you when everything is organized. I want to thank everybody who stayed to the end of the meeting, and including those who came to the other portions of the meeting. I saw a few notes in there saying thank you to myself, and I want to appreciate the support, show my appreciation for the support for my first meeting. I'm looking forward to continue serving YQNA and our community. And have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, Ryan.
Take care.
Good job.
Thanks.